going along. Look at this paper we're showing off. I walked 1,000 miles, I think, trying to sell my pictures. If that's what you mean. I went away down to the old Harper's magazine. Most of the editors, the publishers, had moved uptown, but Harper's was still downtown. And you had to go through the Bowery, and it was pretty tough then. And I was carrying some drawings under my arm to show, see if I could sell them. And I got to this old place, and it was awfully interesting. The iron stairs, so old, they were, kind of worn down the middle. And you went up, and you went up, and you went up, and you went up to the third story, and you could look down and see the front door and the entryway and halls. And up there I saw a door marked Art Editor. And I went in there, and there was a kid in a pink shirt, and he wasn't much older than I was. And I told him what I wanted, and he took my drawings and he doled about as if they were a pack of cards like this. And then he put them together and handed them back to me. He said, of course, you realize that you have to have a reputation before you can get into Harper's. And, I was awful mad at him. But I didn't sass him. I was real ladylike. But I was talking out pretty soon and vowing that I'd never try to do anything for any of them. But I did. I got to doing things for Harper's Bazaar, which was run by the same company. And I knew the editor there. She was an old friend of my brother Jack's. And I had something in their magazine every number from then on, and I hope that little idiot saw it, and I didn't be gone. I don't know whether he did or not. And I don't know what became of him. And I don't want to know. He's a tall and nice person. But anyway, that was an experience, and that was a wonderful old place. So awfully old. They moved uptown after that. Those places where the editors saw the Africans were interesting. There was a little room that you went into. I tried to get in to see St. Nicholas if they wanted anything of my sort. And a very nice little man named Tudor Jenks interviewed me. I was still in my teens then. I wasn't very old. And he took my drawings I wanted to show and took them in and showed them to the editor. And then I was allowed to go in and talk to the editor. And he was quite a young man, and can't remember his name now, but then I met Mary Mavis Dodge, who was the owner of St. Nicholas and the chief editor. And she was a lovely woman. She asked me to come to a lovely party she was giving for other young artists at her home in the country, which I've no doubt was a beautiful place. And I couldn't accept it. You see, at that time my sister was living, and I had to leave her alone so much that I didn't like to do anything that was unnecessary, you know. because she was always watching for me in the window when I came home, and I didn't want her to watch in vain. So I never went there. I never accepted any invitations except once. The editor of Harper's Bazaar and I were asked to go to dinner by Mr. Clark, the editor of St. Nicholas, and Mr. I don't think of his name, the editor of Century. And we did go to dinner at a very wonderful place, and then went to see Eddie Foy, who was a very famous comedian at that time. I didn't think he was so very funny. I thought there was a little piano player, a little Cockney. I thought she was Oscuter. She played the piano and sang the Dear Little Twiddly Winks. Oh, the dear little twiddly winks I loved to make. And she was so cute, and I didn't see anything Eddie Foy. He made jokes, but they were man jokes. I didn't care for him much. So I don't think I made much hit. Anyway, that was about the only time I ever went out with anybody. There were
Drake.
Drake. Yes, Mr. Drake. Mm-hmm. He was the editor of Century. An awful nice man. I was so young that I'd go into a room where all the artists were waiting to go in and see an editor. And I looked kind of pathetic at being so young, and kind of tired too, because I walked everywhere. I couldn't afford to drive, to take cabs and things. So I usually got in before my turn came. And then once in a while they'd let me change something that they wanted changed. I illustrated a poem of this friend of mine's about when Poppy was a little boy. And I had him in a little robe that came kind of short. And there was one verse when Poppy was a little boy. He liked to slide downhill. And of course he didn't know anything about it. And I had his little robe, well, it kind of flopped up, And Mr. Drake said if I could just add a little to that length, I thought more proper. And then another picture I made, the little birds were just having a great time, and it seems that they were mating. I didn't know they were mating, but I made these pictures. They thought it'd be all right to print them. They certainly were old-fashioned. And I went to Scribner, and a very nice man there, and he gave me a little poem to illustrate. He didn't have anything right then, but he gave me this, and I was pretty cute, I think. I took that to show to the Century people. And they said, well, good heavens, we can't let the Scribner get ahead of us. So they gave me something to illustrate. You see, I had a busy head on. And from the time I was 19, I managed to make enough to keep a home for my sister, my father, and myself. And my father was a very disagreeable man and had an awful time living anywhere. He and I never agreed on any subject, but somebody had to take care of him. Eventually, I got so fed up with him that I scraped together $100 and sent him off to go back to New York. I was in Montana then, and to go to my brother Jack. I thought it was his turn to take his old gentleman over. And he started out, Fred was going to take him to the nearest place he could get a train, and he wore a stiff Katie. And then he tied a big handkerchief over that, and sitting up there on the front seat of the wagon, he was really funny looking little sight. He wasn't much bigger than I was, and anybody could pass, you know. And sometimes they just look at him. He was so funny looking. They thought he was crazy. Well, he didn't think much of the Western hospitality out there, he said. And when they got to the station, Fred very foolishly gave him $100. He'd been a traveling man all his life, and he no more went to New York with nothing at all. He went into Canada, visited all his relatives, had a lovely time, and I got a telegram from Jack, "Where's father?" And I wrote and told him, or telegraphed him, that I had no idea. I didn't know where he was. But he eventually turned up, and when the money was all gone. And I thought it was a great compliment that I was the little sister's essential company. They were certainly good to me. We were living out there on the ranch, so I never had any trouble. I was 3 miles and a half from any neighbor. My nearest neighbor and I we had a phone after a while, and we'd phone each other, but one of us would know something very juicy which she wanted me to know. And if I would meet her at a certain fence that was about halfway across the fields, we'd meet there and she'd tell me all these things. But that was a long way to have your nearest neighbor away.
Yeah.
Montana was my brother Bob, and he'd been out there before. And I was 12. I wasn't quite 13. I was a little older than 12. And I had a doll, a baby doll with me. And I hope people see me holding the doll would think me a young mother, and my brother, my husband. I played some wonderful games with myself that way. And then, as we were going across, seems to be about Dakota, but doesn't seem like we could be. If I wanted to see the Montana mountains, to come quick and look. And we went in the back car, and there they were, the white peaks, across this level plain, and then the white peaks. Those were my first mountains, and I've never forgotten them. They were so lovely. I've loved them ever since. My brother and I kept house together. My sister had friends in White Sulphur Springs, and they were very fond of her, and she stayed over there one year. She was going to stay over Christmas, and she wrote and said it was very embarrassing to her. She didn't have any money to buy materials to make different little things for people for Christmas. And Bob and I didn't have any money either, but we didn't tell her that. So I had to have some money. So I wrote a couple of little, I don't think they were poetry, I don't think they were rhymes, and sent them to Jack to see if he'd get them published. And I guess he did because he sent me $12. I said he'd sold them to a newspaper. And so we sent Sister $10, and we had $2. And food was kind of a problem. I'd get a lot of beans, and I'd soak them and I'd cook them. And one time we got down to 1 cup of beans. Well, sir, those beans look too good. You'll never know how good they looked. But I couldn't eat them all because Bob had to have some. He was trying to get some work. It was the time Coxey's army walked. Awful hard times all through the country. And Bob always had a couple of horses that had to be taken care of too, you know. They cost money. But anyway, if we were getting ready to go to a party, we didn't let anybody know how poor we were, of course. I'd never do it. And this lady had asked me to bring a cake. We were all to bring something. Well, how to get something to make cake out of. Well, we looked up a recipe, and it took 3 eggs, and so much flour and so much sugar. Bob went down to the grocery man with the recipe, and he showed it to him, and he said, now, he wondered if he would trust him for that, the materials for that cake. And the grocery man said that he thought he looked like a pretty honest fella, and yes, he would. So, Bob and I made this cake. And if anything happened to that cake, we were ruined. And we washed it like cats and got it in the oven. And that happened. It was a nice cake. It came up just fine. And I made a frosting for it. And Bob was ironing his suit. He was in his underwear, ironing the only clothes he had, so that there'd be a kind of a crease in the pants. And his shoes had a hole in the sole, and I warned him not to cross his legs, but to sit with his feet on the ground so that hole wouldn't show, and to look at me, and if I saw that he was showing that, I'd raise my eyebrows at him. And one of the first things I saw of him in the party was sitting on a piano stool with his legs crossed and that shoe sticking right up in the air. And he never looked at me hoarse. But anyway, we had a good time at the party. And things got better after a while. They always do. And Bob and I always had fun together. Well, let me see. You said, did I have any adventures? I didn't have any adventures. I call them adventure. I went to art school, and they put me, I showed my drawings that I had made in Helena. And the art teacher there and the school thought they were pretty good, and I thought they were pretty good, but it didn't make any difference. They put me in the lowest class there was, and I was to make cubes and squares, and I was to make them just exactly the size, you know how that is. And there was nobody else in that class. I just sat there alone working over those cubes and things. And a young man came and talked to me and was very nice about helping me. And anyway, I was only there a week, and then I went into block hands and feet. And I was there a week and went into rounded hands and feet and heads. Then I went into the top class, a polo or somebody. And there was just one man in that. Oh, then I wasn't there very long. And then I went out to make my fortune. And from that on, I managed. Anybody can manage if they have the will to. I went to the Metropolitan School for a while, and Mr. Levy was the master there, and he was pretty good. But the League was the place to go. And I did all right. Once a week we'd have a, what they call it, we'd all put our drawings up on a chair turned over in the drawing up here. And the professor would go around the teacher and mark them. He wouldn't mark them all. A good many of them never got a mark. But he'd mark them up as high as this, that's it. You know, you've had those there. Well, what is it? Yes. Concord. And I always had a mark. A lot of those unfortunate girls never had one. And I wasn't there very long, and then I had to make a living. I don't know how it would be nowadays. It'd be harder, I expect. And there's so many women. At that time, you know, there weren't very many women in that business. When I really got to making money, Miss Green was one of the women that was in the business. There was another one, I forget her name. That was about all. So that made it sort of easy. Now there's just hundreds of very clever